Hi, I'm Scott Willison, owner of the Confluence Fly Shop in Bellingham, Washington. It is March here in North Puget Sound. We've got a couple more months of winter steelheading in various places around the state and in British Columbia. So today I'm going to tie one of my favorite all-purpose winter steelhead flies. I call it the 11 Steelhead Leech. This is an offshoot of Brian Silvey's tandem tube leech, which has for a long time been one of my favorite patterns. It's versatile, it's easy to tie, it's easy to swap out hook sizes, and it just flat out catches fish. So not being able to leave well enough alone, I had to add a few features to this fly and kind of make it one louder, as they say in Spinal Tap. So this one is the 11 Leech. Starting out, I've got a ProTube Flexi needle in my vise here. This is going to allow me to tie a tube. These will work in any vise. And what I've done, I'm going to use a pink Flexi tube today. And these things are the large 40-40 tubes. What I've done is essentially cut it down to half size. So I've cut half the wider junction tubing off, and I've cut half the smaller tying portion off. And what I could do with those little pieces that I'm left over with, when I'm done here, I'll brush this end with brush on Zap-A-Gap, and then I could just stick them together and make another tube section to tie on. So I've got a pack of 14 tubes here. I can turn that into 28 pretty easily. So now we just jam that on there, and it's important to push it back until this tube or mandrel starts to flatten out. That's going to prevent it from spinning, and you get frustrated in a hurry if that thing starts spinning all over the place on you. I am using a hot pink thread to match this fly. And we're just going to start our thread at the very rear of the junction tubing. There's not a lot of thread that's going to show on this one, and you can use any variety of threads. I'm using a 6/0 Danville today, but 70 denier ultra thread works really well too. I have a black barred hot pink rabbit strip here. And what I'm going to do is just part the hair toward the back half of the tail. I actually remembered some water today. I don't have to use my coffee or bourbon or whatever's handy. And we'll just make a little part there. So we've got a nice clean point to tie this in. And then got that tied in. Move my thread to in front of it. Kind of sweep that back out of the way. And we'll just throw a couple of half hitches in there to lock that into place. And then just to make this fly a little bit more durable, I've got my UV Solares in the bone dry formula. We're just going to brush those thread wraps. And then hit it with the light. And then we'll take this off. And I'm just going to cut that little section of tube there so you can see I've just got a little piece in the tail. We'll set that aside for now. And then put our other piece back on. We'll go ahead and restart our thread here. And then get ready for the next step. So we're going to build a dubbing loop in a second here, and today I'm going to be using Loon's Gator Grip dubbing spinner to twist this up. I like that they make all their tools yellow because it makes them very easy to see. Now, one of the things I'm going to do, because I'm using a lighter thread and I don't want to break it when I twist it up, made a dubbing loop at least twice as long as what I actually need here. I'm going to take that loop and loop that back over, and then we'll spiral our thread around the base a couple of times. That's going to give me a little bit stronger loop to work with for spinning up these materials. And then we'll just let that hang for now. And we'll go ahead and prepare our materials here. So, got a couple of things I'm going to work with. I've got some fluorescent pink Baitfish Emulator flash, some orange barred Predator wrap, and some copper ice dub. And I'm just going to start by cutting the Baitfish Emulator roughly in half. Lay that down there. And going to do the same with the Predator wrap. And I'm going to kind of straighten this ice dub out. Even it up somewhat. And I've got those three materials just stacked on top of one another here. Very carefully slide that off. And then insert that into our dubbing loop. Now once it's in there, as long as I'm pulling that thread fairly tight, I can kind of move these materials around and get them evened out. And then we'll give our dubbing a spin here. I'm just resting that over my finger and then twisting that up. Once I think I've got everything locked in there, I'm going to take my dubbing brush and get everything combed out here. I like to use the end of my whip finisher too to kind of break it up and get out any of those loose fibers. And then we're good to go. We're going to wrap this on just like we would a hackle. Stroking it back with each wrap. then we'll tie that off with about 3 turns. And then just pick that out a little bit more. Good. Now we're going to go back to our little rabbit strip piece here with the tube on it. And I'm going to cut the end of it where I'm tying it in to just a little arrow point. That's going to give me a nice clean spot in which to tie it in. And then we're going to accent that with a couple strands of copper Flashabou down each side. So I've just cut 2 strands. I'm going to tie those both in on the near side, and then we'll just fold them over the top down to the other side. And then I'm going to trim those up kind of randomly. I usually make them even with the little connector tube piece that I've got at the end. So one of our last steps here is going to be to make one more dubbing loop. And I'm just going to use some more water to kind of sweep this stuff out of the way. I don't want it getting caught up in my next dubbing loop here. So we're going to do the same thing we just did. Long dubbing loop. Fold it over. Spiral around the base a couple of times, and we're good to go. All right, and then for the collar, I really like to use Crosscut Rabbit. This is a fluorescent fuchsia color, and the trick is with this to open up your dubbing loop, and then you're going to put that rabbit in there, hide first. Once you put tension on it, that'll lock the thread in place. And then we're going to very carefully cut away that hide. Once that's in there, we can kind of move it around, spread it out. I want it in there pretty even. I don't want a bunch of clumps. All right, got that spun up. We'll brush that out a little bit. And then we're going to wrap this on just like a hackle collar. Build up just a little head there. Use a little bit more water to keep that out of the way. A couple of half hitches. Thread broke at the optimal moment there. And then we'll trim that off. Gonna finish it with just a dab of brush on Zap-A-Gap. And then the very last thing we'll put on there, and do a size medium ultra orange Flexi bead. I like these a lot. You could use a cone as well. These are just a little heavier than the cones. And we'll just slide that on there. We'll pull that off. And then you can see I trimmed that bead down almost flush, or trim the tube down almost flush with the bead. And then we're just going to use a little bit of heat here to melt it. And I usually use a bodkin or a hook lying around or something. Just poke that in the eye and make sure our eye didn't melt shut. And that's it. That's how you tie the fly. I'm going to take a moment here to show you how to rig it. Alright, so I started by just taking my 10 or 12 pound Maxima, and I've tied a non-slip mono loop in there. I want to size that non-slip mono loop so that that knot goes from the top of the junction tubing to just behind the tail here. And then in this case, I have a size 2 owner SSW. I'm just going to pinch that loop. Put it through the fly. And then this little tag end here, I'm going to trim it, but I'm not going to trim it all that close. That gives me a little bit more to jam in the tube so that it doesn't come out. And I actually did this one backwards. I didn't put the fly on the tube first, so we're just gonna go through the back here so I can show you what it looks like. So, and I often like to try to get my hook riding up on this one. So it's just a matter of twisting and turning till you get it about where you want it. But that fly is now rigged up there. And what I like about this is that hook is always going to stay connected to that rabbit strip. So as you get fish biting at the back of the fly, you've got a very good potential to hook them. But there you have it, the 11 Steelhead Leech. Thanks again for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks.